Welcome back, wonderful humans. I'm Danielle and I currently live alone and I'm trying to shift towards healthier meals whilst remaining on a budget. And here's what I ended up eating this week. You'll find that it's a bit of ups and downs, but overall, it's actually pretty decent for once. So for Saturday's breakfast, I had a couple of knockoff wheat bix with a bit of milk and some blueberries, as well as some fresh cold pressed juice. I believe it was an avocado, mango, spinach, possibly apple one, all mixed together in there. And then I had a cup of beanies coffee with a splash of milk in there as well. And I made the effort for once to actually sit down and eat it at my table, trying to get into a bit of a better habit of just focusing completely on eating rather than having distractions around me. Then for lunch, I did have the usual of in this case, a tuna crunch sandwich with a raspberry lemonade. And then I decided to get some wedges as well instead of some eggs. Fancying a bit of something a bit different, even though it was obviously less healthy. And then for dinner, I just ended up reheating one of the breaded porks that I had. It looks a bit funny because of the fact that some of the breading had come off. And obviously, I just popped that on top. And then there was a little bit of sauce under there as well, some of the soy sauce that sort of made it look a lot darker in colour. And then I also had a free bakery item from Lidl that day. So I just have that caramel shortbread with that chocolate on top, which was super yummy, but obviously not the most healthy of things to have so late on in the evening with the sugar content. But then for Sunday, I was obviously having a bit of a slower day. So I initially went to go and make an omelette, but I did completely mess it up and it ended up becoming more of a sort of chunky omelette, sort of scrambled egg kind of situation. That has some mushrooms and peppers mixed in there. And I just had some more of that juice and some more coffee as well. Like I said, well, I did have that later on. I didn't end up having any lunch, but for dinner, I just had a pretty large bit of chicken with some broccoli, cherry tomatoes, and some tagliatelle and a little bit of feta and everything mixed through there as well. So obviously super filling and hearty. Then for Monday, I was once again working the 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. shift. So my breakfast was more around the time of day that I'd normally be having my morning break. And I did just have some raspberries, blueberries, and 0% fat Greek yogurt with a bit of a ginger shot as well. So if you watched my recent grocery video from last week, you'll know what I'm on about. And then for lunch, I did just have some of these beef noodles. I was honestly in so much of a rush and I just didn't really have the time to think about what I was going to do. So I just grabbed some of those. Then for that afternoon snack, I just finished off the last few of these cashew nuts that I had. I obviously had them open for quite a while, just having a few of them, sometimes not even a full portion. But I did have some to finish off. So I did go ahead and do that. For them for dinner, I hadn't thought ahead. I hadn't pre-planned. The meat that I'd taken out was still partially frozen. So instead, I just did some tuna with a bit of garlic mayonnaise, some spring onions, and put that all onto a cheese coated jacket potato with some tomatoes on the side. And then for Tuesday's breakfast, I ended up having most of the day off. I used some unpaid leave time that I could take, and I did some sort of chive and onion cottage cheese mixed through that scrambled egg with a couple of corn cakes and a side of raspberries as well. But by then it was honestly more like a brunch, especially because I'd got distracted making some of these little cakes. They're chocolate and they've got some cherry mixed through. So I did just have one of those in the afternoon to see what they were obviously like, super fresh, and what I actually thought of them. I don't bake as much as I used to, and it means that I always feel a bit unsure of myself in terms of my skills. But then for my dinner, I used the pork mince that I had, as I mentioned the day before, half defrosted. I then marinated that overnight. So it lasted about 24 hours in the marinade of some soy sauce, ginger, garlic, bit of gochujang as well. And I just then put that with some rice and some quick pickle that I'd done. Wednesday's breakfast initially might not look the most healthy. Obviously, it does have quite a lot of sugar in because of the cake, but then it's with some 0% fat Greek yogurt and a nice handful of blueberries. I think it's ended up being about 100 grams of blueberries. But actually, the cake had less calories in it than the bread. And, you know, it's sort of what counts sometimes. And then for my lunch, I had the rest of that cottage cheese on some corn cakes with some freshly cut cucumber as well, which was super delicious. But then for my dinner, I was pondering about what to have, but I did at least manage to pre-prepare and think about it a bit. So I did make sure that I had some chicken to hand. And then I just mixed that with some feta and a creamy sort of sauce with some green beans and some carrots and some onions. There isn't any carbs in here, but that's because the piece of chicken I had was huge. So that kept me filling, and obviously the protein in it kept me going as well. The cake for breakfast theme continues, and again for this day, I just had the exact same thing. And I was starting to run a bit low on my blueberries, which was a little bit sad, but was getting there. So it didn't look as much as it sometimes does. Then for my lunch, I just had a couple of those corn cakes with some reduced fat soft cheese on it, and then a side of some of my quick pickle and some fresh baby plum tomatoes as well. Then for my dinner, I managed to give doing a lentil bolognese a go. Silly me though, didn't exactly remember that lentils are technically legumes, and therefore I spent most of the day feeling quite ill. But you know what? It was tasty enough. I just need to remember to perhaps not do that meal with that many lentils again in the future. But then for Friday's breakfast, as I mentioned, I had ran out of the blueberries, but I did still have some apples around. So I decided to chop up one of those apples and put it with some more Greek yogurt and another one of those cakes as well. Before then, making the time to have some lunch and finishing off that quick pickle. And this time I decided to put that directly onto some of that low fat soft cheese on those corn cakes and then the rest of it on the side as well. Again, this isn't necessarily the most high thing in protein, so it didn't necessarily keep me as full as it should have done. So I did end up snacking on some of these sunflower seeds that are roasted and salted. I only ended up having about half of the recommended portion size of it because I do find that my mouth starts to hurt quite quickly when I'm chomping on them. But then for my dinner, I just had a couple of pieces of pork, a lot of broccoli, and a lot of sweet potato as well. But then, whilst you can't see it here, I did then top it with a little bit of teriyaki sauce that meant that my calories were under what they need to be, but the sugar was quite high. But as always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch. And if you enjoyed, please consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons, and I'll see you again soon.